What's going on, guys? It's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday morning, afternoon, wherever it may be where you live. It's good that you're joining me today, and I'm glad to see you. So let me kind of give you a breakdown of what we're going to be talking about today. Specifically, we are going to be talking about the top tips to selecting the top, or I would say the best final expense carriers available to you. Now, the reason I'm putting this particular training together is because I feel pretty strongly that there's so many different options out there for final expense carriers that it can be overwhelming, especially to new agents. And on top of that, there's just, frankly, a lot of crappy carriers out there. I won't be naming names today in particular, but I'm going to be giving you some tips as to what to look for in order to find the best carriers that I believe, as an independent agent, are the best to work with. So with that said, thanks again for joining me. And kind of protocol here today is if you got any questions or concerns, it doesn't matter if it's not particularly about today's topic. If you have any questions, final expense related, feel free to go ahead and go down here to the comment box and write something below. I'm happy to answer any and all questions that are posed, regardless of whether or not they're exactly on topic with what I'm talking about today. Also, I want to mention, if you're interested at all, I do mentorship training of new agents, in case you've never heard my stuff before. So if you're interested in the final expense business, like what I have to say today, feel free to go down here to the bottom, click the link, and you'll reach out to me directly, and we can talk about the process of joining my program. Whether you're new or experienced, I take you all. Also, I do offer leads if you're interested in something like that. So I do avatar final expense leads as well as Facebook leads. We do direct mail leads, but those are generally reserved for agents that are associated with working with me directly. So with all that said, let's get started with today's topic, which is, again, carrier training tips and tricks. So again, the motivation for today's training is really around the concept of making sure that an agent starts off on the right foot. And a big part of this business is not just sales training. It's not just learning how to present or close or finding the right kind of leads. A big portion of of success in the final expense business is selecting the right carriers and really going about knowing how to select the right carriers. Why is this the case? Why can't an agent just select one company and be done with it? Use that one company for all of her or his clients. Well, that's done today, that's for sure. There are captive agencies out there that make an agent work with just one company. The big problem with that, however, is that you're leaving a lot of opportunity to help your clients out, as well as leaving a lot of opportunity to make more sales on the table. I was on my conference call this morning with my agency. We were talking about how to replace existing final expense companies. And I said a week or two ago, one of the reasons I was capable of selling as much as I did, I think I sold 5 deals in one day. And it was all because I had multiple carriers available to me and I knew what my options were. Had I had just one company or a limited selection of companies and didn't have full access to the full gamut, I would have lost out, I think, on somewhere in the range of $3,000 in commission. $3,000 just because of being pigeonholed, if that was the case, with one company. But because I wasn't, I actually wrote that business, but simultaneously helped my clients out as well, either getting them more valuable coverage than the alternative or just saving them money, or a combination of the two, as it seems sometimes that's the case. So the point in this is to help you get to that point. It takes time to understand and know all the carriers for sure. It's just a function of getting out there and doing it. But the big thing is what do you need to know to select the best companies and choose amongst the many options that are out there? So hopefully the first thing that I'll say here is you got to be a broker. I'm a strong believer in the brokerage independent model. You got to have multiple options in order to maximize your income in this business. And the reason is because no company has the most flexible underwriting in all circumstances. Sometimes it's better. One company is better in certain circumstances. Other companies are better in others. We'll kind of get into that as far as to how to get started in that particular regard. So you've got multiple situations covered. And, you just have to be flexible. And I really think that's either on par or maybe even slightly more important than a mastery of the sales training process. Again, I think final expense is mostly a hard worker's numbers game. You don't have to be Tony Robbins to sell this stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you got to get out there and see the people and fight hard to see them. In combination with a good selection of carriers that can really do really well in helping you succeed in the business. Hey Terry, how you doing today? Your question here is, how do you feel about Americo? I'll jump into this, and again, I kind of answer questions spontaneously throughout the call. Americo is a very good company. They've been in the final expense game a lot. However, and this is all from the standpoint of constructive criticism, I think Americo's got a very good final expense product on the books or on paper. And what I'm specifically talking about is the Ultra Protector product. The problem they had is, and they'll tell you this, they've got some sort of what I would describe to be an internal algorithm on the underwriting side that is not transparent to the agent. What does that mean to you? Well, if you write a case with Ultra Protector, which on paper you can get somebody who has COPD first day full coverage, even if they smoke. You can get people with neurological disorders first day full coverage, even liver problems. I mean, it's crazy. But what happens is, a lot of the times a combination of medications do not allow for a UP2 or their kind of standard rate first day full coverage product to be issued. So you get an email back and it says, hey, this actually turns out to be a 2-year, or maybe it's a 3-year, the UP3 product. And so what sucks about it is there's no point of sale interview with the Ultra Protector product. You have to send it in to see if it gets approved. I remember a case a couple of years ago. I had 5 Americo cases over the course of a couple of weeks, and they all got declined or rated up. And I'm pretty good when it comes to field underwriting, but I was told and confirmed there's a lot of stuff that we can't see on paper in the prescription guides and the underwriting guides that the underwriters consider that end up deciding if it's a UP1, 2, or 3. And so what that ends up being is a lot of inconsistency. And if you're in the home, you got to get the sale today. You got one chance to get the sales, how you have to look at it. You don't want to call back on them a second or third time, because every time you got to go back, it lowers the likelihood of your ability to actually close the deal and get it issued. So I say all this because I only use Ultra Protector and the Americo product only in limited circumstances where there's no issues, they've got COPD and they smoke. That's kind of where I primarily use them, or somebody who's extremely healthy and for some reason I would pick them. With that said, there's also the Eagle Premier product, which a lot of people love, namely because it's a telephonic application. There's no paperwork involved. I think for me the pricing is a little too high. It does have some applicability in certain circumstances underwriting-wise. I think the cardiac issues, it's its highest strength is in. But beyond that, I see no real reason to write it. Therefore, I've never written it. There's plenty of other companies where I live in Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama that I think offer similar underwriting but at a better price and do the job just fine. Because I'm very concerned about protecting my back end so one of you guys don't come behind and replace me like I teach you to. So that's just how I roll, is how I think. So again, guys have questions like this, I can go into excruciating detail to answer them. Terry, what do you think about America? I'm curious to see what you think because I've talked to other agents, kind of similar stories. Some of them love the Eagle Premier product as well. All right, so let's get started here. Carrier training tips and tricks. So there's really 4 things that I'm looking for in a carrier that just help me decide if it's something I want to write or bring on as an agency to get my agents contracted with. These are all very simple but profound, and you want to make sure that you follow these 2 as an agent, because if you don't, you can lose more business, have scenarios like described earlier where stuff gets rated up, you got to go back, you lose cases that you otherwise could have gotten issued elsewhere. So okay, so number 1 is agent ease of use. This is so important. Excuse me. If you're a brand new agent, you want to use companies overall that will get your business issued, that will give you a decision on the phone, that the person has been approved, and is really easy to deal with when it comes to any kind of support related question. There's carriers out there, again, I won't name them, but they're very good products on paper, but they lack the agent ease of use. For example, this one in particular, some of you may guess this, number 1 does not have a point of sale interview. So if you're brand new, you select this carrier as a primary carrier. It can be very useful. I actually use them as a carrier where there's health issues involved and the other ones that we also work with don't work. But if you use it as a primary carrier, the biggest problem you're going to experience is there's a ton of amendments that usually come about with this company. So that means you may have to call back. It's really pretty high percentage rate too, from what I understand. So there's no point of sale interview, so you don't know if you got it approved. Number two, it gets amended a lot. And if you ever try to call into this company, they tend to be very difficult to deal with at times. Some people will say otherwise. But like, for example, I had a client call in at 8:30 or 9:30 in the morning. She just got a bunch of automated calls. This is on the client side, not even on the agent side, which the client side should be easy. But I say all this because if you're a new agent, you're getting started in this business, the key thing is to make sure you can get paid, okay? You can get the policy issue so you can get paid. And so you shouldn't have to worry about all the nuances and little details that really more experienced agents in this business become accustomed to. So my primary concern when I bring an agent on is let's select companies that, for example, have smaller application sizes, 4, 5, 6 page max apps. And we're not talking full written up pages, but not 12 to 15 pages deep. I want a carrier with a point of sale interview. I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. I want a company that my agents know that after they write the case, it's been approved, that they're going to get paid, that there's nothing that's going to come back to haunt them, and that it's easy to follow up on a case, to see where it is and pending. Maybe they can log in online very easily to see what the deal is. Because again, it's very important to have success in this business. If you're brand new to this business, you need to be successful out the gate. This is not a business where you plow in a lot of money for a year before you break even. You really should be breaking even within the first month or two. If you're not, then there's seriously a problem. But that's what I mean, is you got to get the carriers that will allow you to do that. And the simpler they are to use, the better you're going to have a time being successful in this business. All right, so question or point number two, when I'm trying to find a good final expense carrier to use, it's very important that we select carriers with flexible underwriting. Now, each carrier, doesn't matter which one you work with, they all look at underwriting slightly differently, sometimes dramatically. And if you're an independent agent, and this is critical here, I'm assuming you are, you want to pick carriers that will allow for flexibility in different underwriting regards. I do not recommend a new agent pick up 10 carriers to begin with because that's too overwhelming. Not only you got to learn underwriting, you got to learn the administration process, and it's just a headache, and it prevents you from really going out there and helping people to begin with. However, on the same breath, like I said earlier, you don't want to start with one. So the compromise, at least the way I do things, is I pick 3 carriers for my agents to start with. The first carrier I want them to start with, I want them to be the healthy, competitively priced underwriting. So their underwriting's flexible, the pricing's competitive, not the lowest price, but competitive, and they're easy to use, of course. But this is kind of like our bread and butter carrier for whatever circumstances we're in, where we can write a lot of business with them and know that the pricing is good and they're easy enough to work with for the vast majority of our business that we run into. The second choice is what I call a middle-of-the-road carrier. So this is a company that's pretty well priced, but will select and take cases that others that won't. For example, stuff I run into in the Southeast all the time: COPD, heart history issues, diabetes issues, height, weight issues, anything like that. I want a carrier that in some circumstances will cover those issues where my primary healthy bread and butter carrier won't. So you need to have a carrier that does that because you don't want to be putting everybody into a 2-year waiting period policy or some kind of graded policy if you don't have to, if there's other options. And again, there are companies that will cover for COPD, first day full coverage, Parkinson's, lupus, multiple sclerosis, heart issues greater than a year but less than 2, height, weight issues. There's all these carriers, there's several carriers that do that. And you want to work with those for those particular reasons. And number 3, you want a carrier that's either near guaranteed issue or guaranteed issue completely. Now, guaranteed issue for you new guys is where there's no health questions asked. For me, it represents probably 15%, maybe 20% of my business. And I don't like to walk away from that business because it's very good quality for me. And it's money on the table I don't get if I don't write it. Plus, a lot of these people won't help themselves with another company if they go write it with someone else. So I got to be the guy that does the job. So you want a company that is very flexible on a host of bad issues or just doesn't ask questions outright altogether so that you can secure that 15 to 20% additional business. So I always start guys off, and so should you, with these 3 companies. Now, over time, of course, you're not going to cover all of your situations with 3 companies, but you'll cover about 70 to 80% of them. But as you grow, as you get accustomed to this business, and as you get better as an agent, then you can start to add more companies. Pick one from here, pick one from there. Because the other 20% of the business that you'll write is going to be from niche carriers you may only use a couple of times a year. I wrote a case the other day with a company that I probably will not use again this year because their pricing is too high, their underwriting is not sensible enough. But for this one particular guy, we got him full first day coverage where every other carrier would not have written it. And for me, let's see, it was about a $2,000 commission. That's the power of having carriers. I'm not bragging about my ability to sell them all. It's just I wouldn't have sold the guy, no matter how good I am, if I didn't have the tools necessary to do it. So it's critical you understand that is why it's out there, and that's why there's options out there. So, hey, the King, welcome back, sir. How you doing today, man? Ken, how you doing, Ken? I'm going to read your question here. Hi, Dave. Could you elaborate on the expenses and details in doing a ride-along with you? Motel availability and prices, need to rent a vehicle, etc. Okay, so this is for guys that are contracted with me, Ken. I think you're Ken in San Diego, right? So really all you have to do if you work with me or you want to work with me, I do offer ride-alongs. Really briefly here, all you have to do is fly in, drive out to me. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, just north of Atlanta. Stay 2 nights, 1 night. Really all you need is a day or 2 in the field to get a gist of what this business is about. You can catch a cab. I'll pick you up from your hotel, or you can catch an Uber ride. I do all the driving. There's very little required of you. I just had a guy fly in from middle of Washington State. He flew out of Spokane and got here through a couple of different connector flights, and he just stayed in a hotel for a couple of days, and that was good enough. He said he stayed for 3 days. He could have said, yeah, 2 days is plenty. That's why I recommend 1 or 2 days. Really gets the job done for the most part. So hopefully that helps. You don't anything other than that, you're fine. Airbnb is a very good thing. I have stayed over. I don't really like hotels, but I like staying in other people's houses. If you all have never used Airbnb, awesome service. It's basically people rent their houses out or rent their rooms out even. It kind of sounds strange, but it's cheap, it's inexpensive, it's high quality if you get somebody with a lot of reviews. And I loved it. It was very cool. I've done it twice so far. I'd definitely do it again if I go travel. All right, so moving on here. Pricing, number 3, when selecting a carrier. Of course, you got to care about pricing. The last thing I want you to do as an agent is to pick up a carrier as your primary carrier that's upper range, competitive, or overpriced. Obviously, the reason is because in this market that we're in, there's a lot of competition. There's more and more agents getting into it daily because of the obvious advantages you've already seen. So you got to prevent your business for your competitors from coming in to potentially replace you and write more competitively priced business. So it's very important you get competitively priced carriers. Doesn't mean they have to be the low price leaders. It just means they need to be competitively priced so you can minimize the potential for people to come rewrite that business because it was so overblown. There's one particular agency that recruits online. They actually have a YouTube page here. They've been around longer than I have, much longer than I have. And their primary carrier is a mid-range, overly priced company. The reason they do that is because the way they structure their renewals, and they make a lot of money, at least on paper, on renewals and shortchange your agents. But we love these as independent agents because when we walk in behind these particular agents that write this company, there's usually a discrepancy of $15 to $20 a month versus the carriers that I run with that are my primary bread and butter carrier. And these people are not brain dead that we sell to. They want the best price. And if they feel like they can trust you equivalently as the last guy, if not more so, they're going to go ahead and replace that business a large majority of the time. So pricing is very important. Now, again, you're not going to always, it's not necessary to get the lowest price company. If you're $5 or $10 between what you're writing and the most competitive, given the underwriting scenario, of course, you'll be fine. Most people I've seen anecdotally begin to consider replacement only if it's $10 or more expensive a month. So it's got to be that dramatic or larger. That's when you got to start really considering if it's worth the replacement or it's worth writing because of the replacement risk. So again, I go back and say this again. Don't get stuck with high-priced carriers. It's just exposing you to too much risk, unnecessary risk. I right now am writing carriers that are within the top 3 range as primary, competitively priced. And again, most of my writing of business is underwriting driven, and then within that underwriting scheme, I select the most competitive carriers, knowing with some exceptions as far as some companies are a pain to deal with, others are a lot easier. The phone interview is faster. I'll use them preferentially if there is an option, and if it doesn't affect the outcome of my sale too much over the difference of a couple of bucks. So last point here is point of sale interview. I kind of mentioned this in the first portion of the call. Point of sale interviews, I believe, are critical as a new agent. Now, what is a point of sale interview? Well, once you write a case, you call the company up, and they do a phone interview, and they also underwrite you, and they underwrite the prescriptions, and they give you a decision. There's some companies that will do a phone interview that will take 15 to 20 minutes of your time and not give you a decision. You do not want to use a company like that, especially as a primary carrier. You always want to use a company that says this person has been approved for coverage. And if they even say tentatively, as one company does that I use, 95%, 99% even of the time it gets approved is applied for, and nothing really gets stuck in the meantime. I had a carrier once, it was probably about 2 years ago now. The only company that would take this potential applicant, we did the interview, she got approved on the phone. I came back Monday doing some work around the house, doing some administrative stuff from the office, and they said, oh, looks like it's not approved. And you're going to have to go get the doctor to pay money to get underwriting or get doctor's notes in order for us to consider otherwise. It was just like, you got to be kidding me, man. I was there. You said she was approved, and now you're taking it back. It's like, why would I use a company that's going to jerk me around like that? I don't want that. Why use a company that's going to do a point of sale interview that doesn't give you a point of sale decision? So I like companies that give us decisions, because you can walk out of the house with certainty that the deal is done, that it's closed, and you're going to get paid. So that's very, very, very powerful. You must do that. And limit your non-point of sale carriers as much as you can, only in must-use scenarios. And again, I start agents off with both kinds. It depends. Some non-point of sale carriers are very simple to use, very straightforward, but the more point of sale you do, the more certainty your deal is going to get issued as applied for. So try to focus your efforts, especially as a new guy, on that. And I'm a guy who can tell you I hate point of sale. I don't want to say I hate them. I tolerate them. But my primary carrier is a point of sale interview carrier. And it's very simple. It takes 7 or 8 minutes to do the phone interview, very competitively priced. That's where I put the vast majority of my business when I write it, because I'm most interested in not having to go back. Been doing this long enough that I want to fool around. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward business, this final expense thing. You just want to make your life easy. It couldn't get any more simple than that. Find carriers that you like, that are easy to use, that other top producers are using, that are validated in success, that are competitively priced with good underwriting. Have multiple carriers that have good underwriting. And then do what you can to write as much as you can. If you have any suggestions or questions about which carriers that I use, what my options are, and kind of where I like to start my agents off, feel free to go down here to the comment box. You can leave me a comment, or better yet, send me a message, and I'll be happy to show you which carriers that I work with and under which circumstances which carriers that I like. Because not all companies are the same, and especially not all companies are the same given different underwriting scenarios. So it pays to know which ones to use so that you can maximize your success in the field and minimize the spinning of wheels that many agents, including myself, have done with bad carriers. So again, my name is David Duford. I invite you, if you're interested, to check out more about the mentorship program. Go to the bottom down here, click on the contact box. I'll be happy to send you some information on how it works. Whether you're new or experienced, that's what the program's for. Or if you're interested in any of the lead programs you offer as well. Thanks again, guys, so much for joining. Rob, it's good to see you too, man. You're welcome. And we'll see you next week at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Y'all take care and have a good one, okay? Thank you.